Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into today's Author Talk series brought to you by the Library Speakers Consortium. The Library Speakers Consortium is a partnership of more than 350 library systems across the United States, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, with the goal of making Author Talks more accessible to communities of all sizes. I am Brandon Adler, your host and moderator in conversation with each of the acclaimed authors that you will hear from throughout our series. Today, we are so excited, over the moon, to welcome multi-hyphenate star actor and instant New York Times bestselling author, John Stamos, to talk to
Hello,
us about his
Brandon.
memoir, If You Would Have Told Me. So I think I just let the cat out of the bag, John.
I
You just
just
got out.
found out like about a half hour ago, and I started crying like a baby, but because I didn't, never in my wildest dreams did I would I think I'd be on a list like this for sure. Maybe some other lists, but not this one. Um, I'm so grateful. I just can't believe it. I just don't. I like I pretty, it's pretty special, and it's a great tribute as we'll talk about to my mom and dad, and I know they'd be smiling down right now, or they are smiling down right now, uh, coming in at number 4, whatever that. You'll have to tell me what all this means, Brandon, because I mean I know it's a good thing, but I just never imagined. I really didn't. I didn't. I never thought I'd write a book ever. I always. And my wife was just saying like, you always tell me you'd never write a book, and here you are. And I think it also goes. I guess that goes in with the theme of the book, which is like you can do anything, people. My parents never said I couldn't, never put obstacles up, right? So I just did stuff, and I just feel overwhelmed with joy and gratitude right now. I can't even, I can't speak, but I'll try.
Well, congratulations. It's much deserved. The book is phenomenal. Um, I can't wait to dive into it. People asked a lot of excellent questions, and
Yes.
so it's gonna be a fast hour, but it's gonna be a good hour. To make everything run a little more smoothly, though, I do want to kind of give that quick housekeeping information. We have compiled some questions that were pre-submitted with registration, but you can still continue to ask your questions live during this presentation. There's a questions tab just below this live stream. You can click and submit a question at any time. So go ahead and do that. Keep in mind, though, there are a lot of you tuning in, so we will get to as many questions as we can. Now, to formally introduce our guest today, who really needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. John Stamos, a 3-time Emmy nominee, has earned his reputation as a highly regarded actor and producer throughout his over 40-year career in television, film, and on Broadway. His rise to fame began with his role in General Hospital, and he has since captivated viewers with his diverse performances in Big Shot, You, ER, Grandfathered, Full House, and Fuller House, and onstage in Cabaret, Bye Bye Birdie, and Gore Vidal's The Best Man. Beyond acting, Stamos is a skilled musician collaborating with the Beach Boys since 1985. He also serves as ambassador for Child Help, and you can add New York Times bestselling author to that list.
I'm right here, Brandon. You don't have to. Now, so everybody that's part of the library system, you can tell how the last time I went to the library because I call it the library system. But tell me who's listening to us today. Is it
So the
card
people
holders?
listening to you today are card holders and patrons of their local libraries.
Yeah.
The communities stretch far and wide, to a library that has maybe 200 card holders that would never have this kind of opportunity to listen to somebody like you speak, to LA County, which has millions of card holders. So you're
So
speaking
are
to
there a
the
million
everyday
people on here?
person. Everyday
Mhm.
person. Yeah.
Well, I'm grateful, whoever's tuning in. I hope we entertain you, and we'll let you know. Here's my 2 stories about a library. One, I started. I think I wrote this in the book, but then I took it out. I I wasn't very academical, if you will. I think I just made that word up. I wasn't the smartest guy. I mean, I wasn't. I was street smart, and I think I've made up for it for the most part. But I wasn't very good at school. I just barely would squeak by, and when I did, I was usually cheating off somebody's paper. I remember thinking, nah, I got to come up with a cheating system where I put the answers in a pencil or something. So I didn't, I didn't get it. I mean, I didn't. It was hard for me to dig in. Like I always thought, like, why don't you teach me stuff I'm going to learn in life, like that I need, like balancing a checkbook, dealing with the opposite sex, raising a kid. Like let me learn. And they would say, well, you have to learn biology, cutting up a frog, because it's the It's the action of learning. So why can't I do the action of learning with something that I'm going to use?
Yeah.
You know how schools are now, but that's how I was. And I barely graduated. And they were like, okay, Stamos, or the counselor called me Stanos with an N. All right, Stanos, uh, you want to be an actor, huh? You know, and I said, yeah. I said, I'm on out of here. It's like, well, you're not making it. You barely squeak by, but there's one little problem here. I said, what's that? He said, you have 3 library books out for about the whole 3 years you were here in high school. I said, no. He said, yes. You know, I can't remember what they were, but he said,
That's going to be my next question. What were they?
you're not graduating until you bring these books back. I was like, oh my God, Mom, like I think we tore the house apart looking, and I don't recall, I don't think we ever found them. I somehow so they let me graduate, but they said you better turn these books in, and I don't think I ever did. So I want to apologize to all the libraries out there, not just the one at community high school. But so that was that, and then the second I talk about in the book when I got the audition for General Hospital to play Blackie. The description was he was a New York street urchin. I didn't know what that meant, and there was no Google, obviously. So that's the time I think my mom took me to the local Cypress Library, I think it was, and we looked up street urchin, which meant like an orphan on the streets, I guess. And that's my. And I think that was the last time I ever was inside of a library. I think I'm too loud to be in a library.
Hmm. Did you return that book?
Oh, the street urchin one? I don't think I took it out. I think I just looked at it there and left.
Well, libraries, they've really kind of transitioned into these community spaces now, so you might find yourself quite at home in one.
You know what? Sorry, I strike that. One of my first dates with my wife, Caitlin, we actually went to the Reagan Library, and we were there because it was Nancy Reagan's funeral. Talk about a hot date. So for some reason, I think I put it in the book. Yeah, I did. For some reason, Nancy Reagan, because I went there and I went with the Beach Boys, and I knew they were close with her. We'd done a few benefits for them, but I was like, why am I invited to this? They said she made a list of people that she wanted at her funeral, and you were on there. I'm like, wow. And it was actually very romantic because they were reading a lot of these beautiful letters between her and her husband, Ronnie. And I just remember hearing these romantic letters, and I just slowly put my hand on Caitlin's hand, and we just held hands. And it was really a beautiful thing. So I have been in a couple of libraries since high school.
Well, despite the last one being a funeral, it sounded like a good experience in the library.
Yes, it was. It was beautiful.
So we do have a lot of questions flooding in for you. So I want to start with Alicia's, who she says, your memoir. Why now? Why write your memoir now? Were you approached, or did you say it's time? I need this for catharsis. How did this happen?
Yeah, no, that didn't happen at all. I was approached a few times over the years, and I was like, no way. I just don't. I never. First of all, I didn't think I was interesting enough to fill up, how many pages. Like I could maybe do like 10 pages, and then I thought, oh, people just want to know about my, romantic life, and I'm not going to talk about that. It was sort of like that, and then it just was. I write a lot, and I work on, I write scripts and certainly punch up scripts, but I've never. The idea of writing and telling a story, I just didn't know how to do it. And I remember asking some of my friends. Josh Peck was writing a book, and it was before I said yes. I go, how do you even write a book? Like, how do you start? How do you? And so I kept saying no. And then, I became a father at 55, which if you would have told me, I just barely snuck in there because it's something I always wanted to do. And then my friend Bob Saget died, and so I had a little more. I guess I thought I had more to say. And then Macmillan and Holt came around, and I said, well, maybe. I don't know how to. They said, what would you call a book? And I said, if you would have told me, it just came out. And I said, oh, that's a good title. I said, is it really? I just kind of said it. I remember Mike Love calling me from the Beach Boys. It was the first concert I ever went to. And I didn't answer the phone. And I remember saying, if you would have told me that Mike Love was going to call me one day, and I wouldn't pick up the phone. So it came from that. And then I still didn't know, but I remembered that my mom wrote me a bunch of beautiful letters, and my sisters as well. So I gathered up the ones I had, and my sisters, sent copies of the ones they had, and I said, okay, this is a starting point. And I sort of laid them all out as a roadmap to the book, and I put them in the book throughout. So that's sort of how I started, and I remember saying, because they read this article I did on Bob in the L.A. Times, and they said, "Oh, you're a good writer." I said, "I don't even remember writing that. Did I write that?" It was because I was, it was a dark time, or a very sad time. So I said, well, "Okay, let me try. And if I can't do it, I'm gonna, take your money back, and that's that." And I said, I'm gonna do the two hardest chapters. So I started with this. The worst day of my life was when I got in my car and I was not sober, and I could have killed someone, and it was just terrible. And I got a DUI. I was on my way to meet Bob. And my 5 straight stages of grief then were sex, drugs, more, women. It was just a bad time for me. My mom had just died about 8 months before. And so then I wrote the chapter about the day I found out that Bob Saget died. And I was happy to realize that my 5 stages of grief at that point was family, therapy, meditation, sleep, health, and I was like, okay, well, at least I've grown a little bit. So then I just was like, well, how do I get from A to Z? And honestly, I discovered my story as I was writing it, and that's the beginning of that.
Mhm. Why did you choose to open with like one of your darkest moments, the DUI arrest?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I wrote it. I didn't know if it was going to be the opening, um, and then I wrote sort of something before, like a note from the author to sort of
Mhm.
set up what you're going to hear. And then I then I called my friend Jamie Lee Curtis. I said, or I texted her. I said, would you mind writing the forward to this book I have coming out? She goes, well, I don't think people write forwards to memoirs, do they? And I said, yeah, I think they do. 15 minutes later, she sends this long text of what she said, and it was the first good cry I had about my book, because it was just so, this whole it just feels surreal, Brandon. I have to be honest, and I'm saying that with humility, because it just doesn't seem like this. I guess I'm 60 now, and I guess I have done a lot, and I've done a couple right things along the way. So I have all these really nice people and really great stories to tell.
Mhm.
But I wanted to get that out. I didn't know if it was going to go first or not, but I just wanted to start with the hardest thing. And as it turns out, it was first, and then the Bob chapter is the last chapter.
Mhm. It's a nice kind of progression through the book, opening, especially with the stages of grief, like how you were working through your grief in the beginning, and what you had and how you were working
Did
through
you
it.
see what happened there? I have this big silly. If
Oh
can
no,
I
it
think you mentioned
fell.
this.
I see it now. Yeah, that you
So
taped your mustache onto.
I asked the assistant. I said, "Give me a little thing to put in the back so we can promote the book." And there's this book, and then this showed up. I was like, "That's big. Watch, look. I'll show you how. Like here's
Oh my god,
so it's see. Then I
that's your
put
own
up,
billboard for your office.
but it just fell right in the middle of us talking. Now I don't know if is that a bad sign? I mean,
Can't be. No.
no, it can't be. Everything's going great.
Yeah. So I in your author's note at the very beginning of the book, you lead in with this beautiful vulnerability and honesty, but also with humor, which I find interesting because you mentioned chasing and craving roles that allowed you to be funny throughout your career, but you're also very funny in your writing.
Thank you,
So
Brandon.
were you trying to be funny? Like what were you doing as you were writing? Are you just like kind of stream of consciousness?
Yeah, I mean, I take that sounds like an insult, but it probably isn't. It's like,
It's
what were you trying to be funny there? Like, are you trying to be funny?
well, I mean,
I know what you're saying. Did I set out to, to write? I I think most of my writing over the years has been sort of rewriting television shows and stuff that I've been on, so I do know where a joke is. But yeah, I think some of the humor just came out as I was writing stream of consciousness. I did a what they call a vomit draft. I just went
mm,
and got it out on paper. And I had this wonderful woman that I worked with a little bit, and I sent it to her, and she zhuzhed it up, and I unzhuzhed it, and went back and forth a little bit. But it all came from the humor. I think just came from the situations. I mean,
yeah.
but I do talk about there that, like, if I could write, like everybody's got a book on them. This is mine, And I think have you written anything, Brandon, or do you write?
Mostly academic. I've been published several times academically,
Oh yeah.
chapters, things like that, but not those are not funny.
Well, they could be. But academical is not a word, right? I just wanted to
It
check
is
that.
not, no.
Okay, good. Because you wrote academic. Okay, good. I'm gonna write that down. Uh, I honestly, uh, I loved comedy. I love stand-up comedy. That's why I was really, we can talk about it. But Bob and I did not get along in the beginning, but I
Mhm.
always thought he was a genius, and I just didn't tell him for a while, and then we became friends. But I study these guys. I love the mathematics of it. I love the timing, all that, and I always, I would, I'd much rather spend some time with someone and have them walk away going, "He's funny. I didn't know he was so funny. He's funnier than I thought." Than he's handsome or he looks, I would rather be funny, and or at least try to be, as you would say, Brandon.
Well, I don't
I'm kidding.
you're not gonna let me live that one down.
No, no, I got exactly what you're saying. So it was, yeah.
Okay. Well, so Anaya is saying recently you posted to Instagram a loving tribute to the late actor Matthew Perry.
Mhm.
Um, how has she's wondering how has seeing others in your field who struggle with addiction, alcohol, and all impacted the way you live today, especially since you've kind of put it all out there in your very first chapter?
Well, I mean, the Matthew Perry thing is so sad and tragic. I knew him. I knew him in the old days before he was on Friends, and he was always very nice to me and kind. And I sort of told a story on the Instagram. I I did a guest spot on Friends, and it wasn't. It was I guess maybe a little lower peak, a lower time of my career. I was just kind of stumbling a little bit and trying to find my way. So I wasn't. I don't think I was on everybody's mind. Regardless, Matt was very sweet to me, and we rehearsed a little bit, and then tipping the audience in, and I was standing behind the door, waiting for my cue, and he came up and whispered. He said, "The audience is going to go crazy for you. Wait until you hear the screams." I'm like, "Oh, thanks, man," because I was a little nervous for the whole thing, and the show was so hot then, right? And I walked through the door, silence. I mean, crickets, crick, crick, and I was like, I took that nanosecond, like, oh, should I cry? Should I start over? Should I just keep going? And I just like kept going, and the scene ended, and that was that. And I said, they gonna do that again? No, we got it, John. We got it. I was like, okay. And then I'm slithering to my dressing room. I was like trying just to not make eye contact with anybody. And I could hear Matt, and he goes over to the audience. He said, John Stamos, ladies and gentlemen. He said, you probably didn't recognize him at first because he's so damn handsome in person or something like that. And I thought, man, that's a stand-up thing to do. It was really nice of him. It's I caught myself as one of the lucky ones. This addiction is no joke, man. And it my parents, I think, were functioning alcoholics, and although they didn't drink until they were like in their 30s or something, but I always could handle it, as a lot of people do. And then, but you're poking at a monster, right? It poking, and then one day it just went, "Rawr," just ate me up. And all of a sudden, you just find yourself. I found myself just. I thought it was I thought I was funnier or better when I was drinking, or I was more charming, and little did I know, I was not, obviously, and it was, but it really started to get in the way of my life, and I was, I felt like I was disrespecting my childhood. I had such a beautiful childhood. I had such incredible parents, and I was confusing the universe by acting like this. Um, and I went through divorce, and then my dad died, and then my mom died, and that's when I really went down. So thank God that my sisters, my family said, "Okay, that's it. Off you go." And I went to rehab, and
And you
uh,
listened, you went.
I listened, and I went, and it was there, and it was very expensive. So I thought, I'm going to put my all, which I hadn't done up to that point, really. Excuse me. I'm going to put my all into this and see what happens. And I'm glad I did, because it's been, life saving and life changing.
Mhm. So your parents are a big part of this book, and I think they had to be because it gives us the readers a perfect picture of how John Stamos came to be who he is. Your dad's work ethic, compassion,
Mhm.
respect certainly rubbed off on you, as we learn in the book. Your mother's sense of humor and courage. Um, Jackie wants to know, who was your biggest influence in your family growing up? Was it one family member more than the other? I kind of feel like I don't know your parents, but after
Mhm.
reading it, I do. So I see where Jackie's coming from.
Well, I mean, you read the book. I have to say, everybody, my 2 sisters and my mom and my dad, the way my mom and dad treated each other was really beautiful. My dad had a whole lot of respect for women, and I think that's stayed with me. He never held My mom wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and she wanted to be around her kids, and she wanted to do her charity work, which got more and more over the years. She taught, CCD at the Catholic Church, catechism, I guess, or whatever they call it, CCD, right? And my dad never held money over her head. In fact, he said, she had a much harder job than he did. And so just watching the way he respected my mom and my sisters, really have stayed with me. Um, I think that nowadays, even the inequality in the workplace between men and women is long overdue to be fixed. And I think so. Anyway, I got that from them. And my mom was the soft side, right? And she had enough love to fuel a small country. She would say, "I love you" 20 times a day. And my dad would say, "God darn it, Loretta, you're wearing it out. You say it too much." And he would say it when once in a while. So he was sort of like a dad, like a just a, um, he was kind of he was a lion, but inside he had the heart of a lamb. He was softy too.
Mhm.
And then my mom was just she just wore all the love on her sleeve. She would highlight the best part of someone, and that's what defined that person to her. And
That's
I would be so embarrassed by her a lot of times. Just, can you hear the squeaking chair? You'd
Yeah,
think
but
a New
I
York
think
Times
it's bugging
bestseller
you more than anything.
would have some DW40 or something. Sorry, gang. Um, my picture's falling down. My chair is squeaking. It is Halloween, and I have to apologize. I'm so tired. I got off this book tour, and I still have a lot to do. And then I really wanted to be here for Halloween because it's a big thing at my house and my son.
I was
And
gonna ask
so,
you if y'all went trick or treating or not.
oh yeah. Well, this neighborhood that I live in, before I moved in, they said, "No, they told you about Halloween, huh?" I'm like, "No, what?"
Uh,
Well, it's like 2 to 3,000 kids come down our street,
oh my
specifically in this neighborhood. So we have to gear up every year, but we love it. It's a fun thing. Obviously my son, I put him to bed last night, and as he was falling asleep, he said, "Dad, I'm gonna cry." I go, "Why, son?" "Because Halloween is over, and I have to wait for another year." He said,
Mhm.
"Come around," as if he doesn't get enough candy. But those are the moments. Like I'll just jump into that, which is like I realized writing this book that the small things are what counts. The little moments, the little wins, the microtransactions, the little. That's what to me. That's what makes a person, not a TV show or defines it. But that's not a TV show or
Mhm.
specific thing accomplishment or whatever it is. I think it's the little tiny moments throughout the day, the way people treat one another. My dad, I watched him talking about influence. We had restaurants, and he treated the busboy the same way he treated his best customer, and that's stayed with me to this day. I just unless they were jerk offs, then anyway. But he just gave everyone the best shot first, right? And it was a and I when I got on, so I was working on my dad's restaurant since I was like 14 or something, and I got on General Hospital, and I remember calling home, and I used to like fake them out at first. It's like the phone rings, and then they're all around the phone. I can hear. I said, "I got bad news. I got it. I got you to the hospital." And you hear screaming and everything. And my dad in the background, you can hear, "Tell you can't work on Sundays. You're my Sunday guy." So, and I worked at his restaurant on Sundays. I started General Hospital. The show started airing, and I'm still going in on Sunday to work for him. And people started coming in saying, "I'll have a cheeseburger." Wait a minute, aren't you the guy? No, cheeseburger, French fry. And then girls started coming and taking pictures and stuff. I said, "Dad, I'm famous. I gotta quit." I said, "Nope." And I don't know. In writing this book again, I look back and go, did he keep me there because he wanted to keep me humble? Didn't work yet. Or was it about work ethic or discipline or it was good for business? But then he came down to the set one day of General Hospital early on, and he saw the way that I treated the crew and the actors and the producers, like he does at the restaurant. And he said, "All right, it's time for you to quit. I believe you have a career here. Be a good man, work hard, study hard. I love you, and best of luck."
Mhm. even throughout the stories that you relate to everyone in your book, the conversations that you have, no matter who you're talking to, how powerful they may be in Hollywood, you're talking to everybody the same, which
Yeah.
was
So
it's very respectful. I loved that.
I love people. I love good people, and we need more, just interaction, happy, joyful. Uh, everybody wants to be. Everybody wants to matter. Everybody wants to feel good. Everybody wants
Yeah.
to be told that they're doing well. I mean, people work so hard, much harder than I do. There's some guys working at the house yesterday, and they finished, and they were leaving. I said, "Oh, I want to tell you, I really I appreciate you guys. How hard I watched people doing real jobs, and I go, my God, you work so hard, and then I come in and mess it up. I was, oh, thank you. you know, uh,
Well, to continue talking about your mother a little bit, I just have to say that one of my favorite stories is her chasing after Sinatra,
yeah,
asking if he remembered kissing her in Vegas when she was 21 and like the bodyguard kind of stepping in and she's like, "Ah, he wasn't a good kisser anyway."
yeah. That's my mom. She's like Lucy. You know, she had this story that she met on her honeymoon, and they were going to see Don Rickles and Frank Sinatra and who was it? It was the restaurateur. Oh gosh, darn, I can't think of it. I'll think it. I'll come up with it. Not Jilly Rizzo. Anyway, and he came up and said, "Can I buy you a drink?" And she said, "No, I don't want Sinatra. No, I don't." Toots Shore. And Toots Shore said, "Hey, Sinatra's here. Mr. Sinatra wants." And he comes over and, "Hey, can I buy you a drink?" "No, thank you. I don't drink." "Well, can I give you a kiss?" "No, I'm just married. My husband's upstairs getting taken a nap or whatever it was." And he went in and kissed her anyway. And that was her story. And I believe her because she was hot. And so years later, I talk about my dad as I have here, as my hero and a guy that never, how you look up to your parents and then one day you go, they're just human. Yeah. My dad was always bigger than life to me. He was always a superhero. I never got to that point where he was just a human. I loved him so much. So how do you pay back someone like that? He loved Sinatra. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go to the Frank Sinatra concert and I'm going to try to introduce my dad. And I was trying to pull every string I could, press agents were calling saying, "Oh, John would like to." I said, "No, no, no." And then finally they said, "If Mr. Sinatra wants to meet you, you'll know." I'm like, How? They set up a smoke signal or something. So we're at the concert and Don Rickles goes on first. And I didn't know him at this point. And then intermission comes up and I get a tap on my shoulder, who I later found out was his friend now, Tony O. He said, "Okay, Mr. Sinatra was, Mr. Sinatra was here now." I'm like, wow. So we walk backstage and I go, "Mom, be cool." She was into a couple wines already. So we go up and we meet Frank, Mr. Sinatra. And he was, he was great. But you could see, here's the thing about the greats. They put everything they have into every single performance from my point of view. And he was very focused. He was okay, nice to us, but he was focused on the show and it was coming up. So he's okay. Let's get some pictures. We have some pictures, and he's kind of pointing, telling the camera person what to do. And then it was time for a group picture. My mom and everybody got in, and my dad was just standing back about 10 feet. I go, "Get over here, Dad." And he goes, "No, that's okay. That's okay." And I looked at him and I looked at Sinatra and I was like, either Sinatra's thinking, "F you, Stamos' dad. You'll never get another shot taking a picture of me." Or Stamos' dad was cool. He could just watch and be proud of his son, but doesn't have to be in the picture. And it was that was that.
Mhm.
And then as he's walking to the okay, thank you. He's very polite. Julie Rizzo, his guy, walking him to the stage. And Mom goes, "Oh, hold on a second, Frank. I have to tell you. Now, you wanted to kiss me." And I think it was the closest I've ever seen my mom to getting killed by a mafia guy for sure. And "Get away, Mr. Stamos. He's going, he's going to the show." Frank starts to go, "You weren't a very good kisser anyway," she says. I go, "Mother, let's go, please." Yeah, it was great. And then so Rickles, so Frank does his thing, and my dad really, the two of us just looked at each other. Went, wow, it was a nice emotional moment between the two of us. And then Rickles comes out at the end and he introduces people in the audience. Says 3x5 cards. So and so's here. Tony Danza's here. Stamos is here. And I was just kind of like keeping. I was just sinking down in my seat a little bit because Tony Danza was there, and which we could get to.
Yep.
And so Don says, "Well, he's probably sitting in the cheap seats up in the grass. In fact, he's probably smoking grass." And Sinatra grabs the mic from him and says, "Smoke one for me, Johnny." And that was it. I looked at my dad. I said, see, I'm cool. It was a nice moment.
Stamos, right?
Stamos, yeah, that's right.
Stamos.
Do you listen? Are you an audio? Do
Oh
you
man,
listen? You better
so
not be. It's a library thing here.
it's both. So libraries, there are several apps, Reading, Libby, that
Oh,
you
right, right,
you
right,
can get
right,
things
right.
to listen to. Yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
Sure. I love doing the audiobook of this. It was, they said, "Oh, it'll take about 5, 6 days." It took me about 32, 33, because I was, first of all, you're cold reading your book.
was that the first time that you'd read it out loud all the way through?
Yeah, why would I read it out loud? I mean, I'm not gonna,
I mean,
"Come on, neighborhood kids, come over here, I'm gonna read a chapter of my book." Yeah, it's, you just don't read it out loud ever. And so it was interesting, and then I got a chance to, they said, "You can change the line here or there." I rewrote chapters, I took chapters out, I cut things.
during the
And,
audiobook?
yeah, because the book has the yeah, as I was doing the audiobook, it was
Mhm.
sort of an editing process for me because, you're in there changing and moving things and taking notes and doing stuff,
Right.
and you really never have a chance to sit back and read the whole I didn't anyway, the whole thing. And so it was
Yeah,
the first time. Yeah,
writing 101 is like you should read it out loud before you say this is the final copy. Yeah.
now you tell me, Brandon.
Sorry.
Mhm. Did you do audiobooks for your academical books?
No, I did not.
No?
I
What are
mean,
they about? Tell me.
it'd be a perfect time for, like, putting people to sleep. But I mostly wrote about, informa access to information. I focused in my background is in law, and so I
Oh,
focused for a long time in, access to libraries and prisons and things like that.
wow,
Yeah.
interesting. That would not put me to sleep. That's interesting. And so if you have the next book, I'm happy to do the audio, portion for you.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
Thank you.
Um, it won't put people to sleep, so I think that would be perfect.
I actually did, this thing, I'll say real fast. I Before this book, I got hired by a company to do these sleep, stories, and it
Yes.
was very difficult. It was so hard because, I was like, "The cowboy and the horse." John, can you slow it down a little bit? The cowboy and the horse. John, could you not so much inflection, we're putting people to sleep. The cowboy, and this went on for 3 days, and I shot myself in the head. That
And
was
then
great.
you were asleep because you were
Yeah.
reading too slow.
Rico said, Rico's used to call Full House. For some reason, his impression of Full House was, "Hello, Daddy. Would you like some apples?"
Were you
I don't know what
British?
that has to do with fellas, but he did say he uses that. He said, "I use it as a nightlight." I said, "Oh, thanks, Don." Mhm.
Well, speaking of the audiobook, Katie says, "I listened to the audiobook and loved hearing your story in voice. When you were writing, did you know that you would be reading/performing it as an audiobook? Did this affect the way that you wrote?" But you kind of just talked about that as far as editing process. But did you know from the get that you would be reading it?
Oh yeah, because the last 5 years or so, I think that's what I've been doing. It just feels like I didn't read much in school, as I said earlier, and then I went back and sort of did some of the classics. Steinbeck, for some reason, I really gravitated towards, and Stephen King. And I love that Bachman series that he did. And then the internet came around, so it was hard to just sit and read. So I started with the audiobooks, and I
Mhm.
was really looking forward to it. It, I knew it was going to be one of my favorite things to do with it. And then as I'm reading it, I swear to you, it took me so long. You would think that I'd never. It's
How did you
very
not lose your
emotional.
voice?
You lose your voice. Richard Marks is a friend, and he lives down the street. And I was telling him when he said, It's harder than being on stage for 2 hours for some reason." He was right. He's not right about having better hair than me, but he was right about that. And he's a good guy. So it was difficult, and I would, after a couple hours, I'd be like, then the te taha. What's that? How do you say that? Taha. They're like, "Go home, go home." So it was like that. It was, and I felt the poor editor. I mean, I couldn't get through. Honestly, if I got through a paragraph without messing up, it was a success. And which means that you just keep doing it over and over and then change this line, change that. I was also listening to myself as I'm reading, which is, you don't want to do. But I sent the editor a gift because I said, "That has had to be the hardest job that you've ever done." He said, "No, well, it's one of them." Whatever. It was sweet.
So I've heard you in other interviews say that the audiobook is your recommended format for people for your memoir. Why do you say that?
Well, I think we just talked about that. I mean, because I think I don't know. I mean, to hear to hear me saying it, and also,
Well, but
I
you do
mean, when it
lose
gets
some
when it,
things. You do lose some things if you don't look at the print copy, like your mother's beautiful script and the little letters
oh,
and
you're right, yeah,
the
yeah.
photos and things like that.
Here's the deal. I'd say buy the audiobook, buy the regular book, and then follow along. My mother-in-law told me that last night. I said, "Oh, thank you."
Mhm.
But I get to do, when it got emotional in the book, which it does a lot. You know it. I mean, I was crying. I mean, not too much. I tried not to blabber through it, but and then and then the funny parts are maybe funnier because I can do the. I do remember that was a good question earlier. I do remember as I'm writing it, is this the funniest way to say it out loud? Is this the best way to write this joke so it makes sense? And then I talk about Sammy Davis Jr. in there, so I ended up doing his voice. Jimmy Page, my dad. I do a lot. Mike Love. And I actually went back and redid. What did I redo? Like, I think it was Mike Love because it was just sounded like I was making fun of him. Yeah.
So you do so one of the things that I love about your story and the moments that you share is that many of them are so relatable. You're a relatable guy. Um, even
What,
like,
the one where I played with the Beach Boys in front of a million people,
oh yeah,
or when I got to our hospital after 2 auditions,
I
or
did something
what's the
similar
most
yesterday.
relatable part?
So no.
Sorry, what's that?
Growing up in your dad's kitchen,
Yes,
right? Working, hanging out at Disneyland with your friend, Knott's
right,
Berry Farm, marching band, things like that.
right,
Okay, like
exactly.
at the beginning of your life, it's all it is relatable, but your career trajectory from the beginning really seemed that was the unrelatable part. It seemed like fate. And so then I was really interested to read in chapter 15, I think it was chapter 15, that there was, you said this line where you talk about dreaming too big and never getting close can really damage the spirit.
Mhm.
But it seems like from your memoir that all of your biggest dreams have come true. Famous actor and performer, your household name, successful musician, especially playing with your musical idols, the Beach Boys, all things that you dreamt about as a boy.
Right.
So does this line apply to you, or is there something more that you've been afraid to dream about?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I can't remember what part you're talking about because I would say, I think I would talk to Bob, who saw himself so, the number one comic in the world with 20 Netflix specials and playing, sold out stadiums. And I think it was some of that, which was like, Bob, let's bring it down a little bit. Then if you get close to it, then that's great.
Mhm.
Um, but if it's way up here and you only get halfway there, it's so disappointing and it can be damaging. I think maybe that's what I was talking about. If I did just say, "Don't dream too big," then I'm gonna recall the book and scratch it out from every. I, it's not that it's again, like I didn't dream that big. I mean, I'm bigger than most, but or achieve a little more, but I just wanted to be on a sitcom. I didn't say I wanted to be George Clooney. Well, maybe I did, but I
You said
mean,
you wanted to be John Travolta.
I wanted that's true, and I'm not. So, see, I didn't reach that level. I wanted to be on a sitcom. I wanted to be funny, as we talked about. A Gary Marshall show. I loved Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley and Mork and Mindy and all those shows. So that was really my biggest dream, and I got that. And the Beach Boy thing was, I mean, I don't, it's one of the questions that I get asked most. Like, how did you get involved with the Beach Boys? I
You were
don't
being
really know.
chased by girls.
Yeah. It was one of the first times that they were my idols. I just loved them so much and still do. And I was really depressed because I caught my girlfriend in bed with somebody else, and it was my first love, not the guy, but the girl. And I was so brokenhearted. And here's the relatable stuff. I mean, I really did try to find
Yeah.
those moments because, I wanted people to go like, "Well, Stamos got cheated on," I mean, I think maybe a lot of people out there think, "Well, I don't have money, I'm not decent looking, so that's why that my wife left me or I cheated," or, you know, I mean, it was happening to me and it happened a lot. my wife, my wife read some comment the other day about, well, maybe he got cheated on because he's got a small penis. She goes, I'm gonna write back that they're right. I said, that's okay. That's um, but I think she did. I gotta find
I
that.
think she did anyway.
So I wanted to find the relatable moments, like being dumped and being bullied. I was bullied, before that was even a word. Sorry, I'm all over the place. We were talking about relatable moments. Broke
Dreaming,
dream,
dreaming too big. Yeah.
dreaming too big. Yeah.
Is
Well,
there is there anything that were afraid to dream of because it seemed too big?
um, I don't know that. I don't know that answer. I didn't think like that. I don't
Yeah.
think. I mean, I didn't dream of playing with the Beach Boys. It, sort of just happened. I dreamed of being on a sitcom, like I said. And when I got on General Hospital, I was on for 2 years. I had this 2-year contract because they were gonna Blackie was gonna die like after 5 episodes or something. And my mom wrote in a bunch of letters and everybody, so I stuck around. But I wanted out. I wanted to be on a sitcom, and I had this last lunch with this legendary producer Gloria Bonte, who produced. And I said, she said, why are you leaving my show? I said, well, Gloria, I want to be funny. I want to go on a sitcom. You want to be funny, huh? Okay. It's like a mafia. We went to this restaurant called the Dolce Vita, and Dean Martin was over the other side, and you could hear the sort of the Godfather music playing. And she said, well, if you leave, dear, you'll never work in this town again. And I said, oh, no, yeah, I probably will, Gloria. I thank you, but I think that's how I was very naive, and I hope that comes across, that my naivete worked in my favor, because I just didn't. Again, it wasn't about dreaming. It was just like I'm going to do this. I'm just going to do this,
Yeah.
and that's that,
Mhm.
right? So I played with the beach. Was that I I
What would
I like
you
to focus on that bully story because it really propelled me.
please
It,
do? Yeah.
yeah, it was that moment, and I tried to capture it. Of all of a sudden, girls started to like me. I wasn't. I was a sort of a gawky, dorky kid. I was in band. I was marching band, and I played with puppets and magic. And I was just a goof. Like, maybe at lunch, I remember just doing stunts and like tripping over girls, and I'm like, yeah, stay off. And so I'm in marching band, and this kid playing cymbals said, "Hey, so and so wants to. She thinks you're really cute and wants to go out with you." And she was the hottest girl in the whole town. She went to a Catholic school. I said, "What?" I stopped immediately in my tracks. A trombone guy or tuba hit back, and I said, "What?" He said, "Keep walking." Yes, she thinks you're cute and wants to go out with you, but don't tell anybody. Her sister told me, and I swore I would. Okay. We had a big party, big block party that night. I told everybody I could possibly tell, and it was like a game of telephone. And it went from the dork party, which I was at, all the way to the jock cool party. Turns out her boyfriend was there. Well, who knew she had a boyfriend? And he got pissed. And so I was in a car with another friend, and I get a knock on the window, and I rolled into, hey, what's going on? Bam! Pops me right in the eye. Gives me this black eye. And I'll never forget the pain and the embarrassment. And I had to go to school, and there was no talk of that word. There wasn't even a word. There was no
Yeah.
counselors I could go to. And I didn't really, I was afraid to tell my parents. I mean, they saw it, but they was like, oh, you're okay. I mean, just be, you know. And I lived in fear. This guy wanted to beat me up. I was afraid to, every corner I walked, I became a really good friend with this other big jock. It was like a first bodyguard I ever had, I think. And I never forget it. I walked into the bathroom, and I saw written on the mirror, "I'm gonna kill you, Big Nose." And I was like, "Oh my God." It was just that defining moment. I said, "That's it. I got to end this. I have to do something. I have to become famous." That's what went through my head.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be so famous that I'm gonna get bodyguards, and they're gonna beat him up, and I'm gonna invite him to a Beach Boy show, and I'm gonna beat him up backstage. And that stayed with me. Every milestone that I hit, I remember thinking, "I'll show him. I got there. I'll show him."
Yeah.
And so I wanted to dedicate the book to him, but they told me not to.
Well, I think in your author note, he might have been the person you were positing couldn't read.
I did say that, yeah. I said, I said I've changed the names from, a couple assholes because, I didn't.
They probably can't read anyway, but they could
Yeah,
listen.
that's true.
Yeah.
I
So
don't know. Yeah, that's right. If he can listen, yeah. Well, if he's listening, I would say, hey, I've grown up a lot. Look, I'm very successful. I'm very happy, and I thank you for giving me that little extra
Yeah.
boost. And that's it. I'm thank you. God bless, and good night.
Mhm.
But then I'd say, I dated, no hard feelings. But I dated that girl for a couple of years, and she told me you were hung like a finch. So see you later, bastard. I still hold anger against that
It's really with you. You can feel your eye, like, pulsating right
guy.
now.
Right? Yeah. Can you
Yeah.
see that? My tired eyes.
So you've now mentioned, well, in name once, but the story now twice, this Tony Danza connection and your heartbreak.
Tony, who?
Yeah, uh-huh.
It's so funny that's one of the stories that got plucked out by the press when I was in New York last week. It was Tony Danza. So I was in love with this girl, and I couldn't get a hold of her on the phone. And she says that we were broken up. Maybe we were. I don't think she told me, but um, uh, and I walked in and I saw 4 feet, coming out of the bed. They were asleep. And I said, I'm gonna kick this guy's ass. And he kind of rolled over, and I saw his abs, like ripped abs. Like, I'm gonna run like hell. And I ran down the driveway, and I'll never. I was like, "Don't cry, John, don't cry." And tears running down my face. And it turned out to be Tony Danza. Now, one of the reasons why I wrote this, because as I said, discovered my story along the way,
Mhm,
and I wasn't gonna put it in just to put it in, but then I realized, wait, there's a connection. So Full House goes on the first season, does okay, not great, and it was on the bubble, as they say. We weren't guaranteed to be picked up for season 2. So they said, we're going to try something. We normally don't do this, but we're going to try putting you on after one of our hit shows in the summer reruns and see if you garner an audience. And if you do, then we'll think about picking you up. The show was Who's the Boss? So starring Tony Danza.
mhm.
So it's like, he screwed me over there, but then, gave me. I probably wouldn't be talking to you if Full House only ran one season. So there you go.
Well, you also you almost left Full House, right? Because you only agreed to the role on Full House because you thought it would give you a chance to be funny,
Yeah,
so long
yeah,
as, like, the kids were, like, support roles, not
yeah,
starring roles, and
right.
so you went into that pretty in depth, and you were like, "Get me the hell out of here." How did that
Yeah.
evolve?
Well, I couldn't leave. I wasn't gonna quit because I had a contract, but it was always pitched to me as like it's gonna be bosom buddies. Tom Miller and Bob Boyett produced Bosom Buddies, and Jeff Franklin was one of the writers on that show. And I said, okay, this is so it'll be like Bosom Buddies, but 3 guys and kids in the background, and no cross dressing until season 3. You'll be fine. And then that was on Bosom Buddies. And then I talk about it, and I showed up at the hotel to do the reading, and I'd done General Hospital. I just come off this show with Jack Klugman, where he played my father, and he was my first mentor. And I was the big in my head, I was the big guy in the room, and this is my show, and I was like, and I walk in, and the mothers are, "What is that?" And the thing, and we start the reading, and the kids, especially Jodie Sweetin, are so friggin' funny. They're blowing the roof off the place. You couldn't even hear my lines. They were laughing so hard through them. I was like, oh my God. And I started to sit through the reading. I was like slipping down, like doing all this stuff. And as soon as it was over, and this applause and everyone's going crazy, I ran to the lobby, and I had a quarter, and I jammed the quarter in the thing. And I said, call my agent. I said, get me off that show. It was it was that. Then we started it, and it was fine. The 2 hardest chapters I wrote, I started off to say I did the first one, the DUI and Bob dying. The Full House chapters were the hardest for me, and I wrote them. I got them in just in the nick of time at the end. I didn't know. I know how important the show was to people, so I had to give it that. It took me a while to come around to the show. And Jeff Franklin's writing a book, the guy who created the show, and he was here the other day, and he said, when did you come to terms with the show? I said, not until I wrote this book, to be honest with you. Because I really wanted to think about, not myself, but what it meant to the world, what it meant to people. Why
Mhm.
are people still, we're on like our 4th or 5th generation of people watching this show. And so I took a minute to really think about that. I watched a couple episodes even, which I hadn't done in a long time. And I go, what is it? And I realized that there was no central character on the show. The central character was love, and it was a family, but it it wasn't what people thought of as a traditional family. It wasn't a mom and dad and 2.3 kids or whatever. It was but nonetheless, it was a family. And so all these, it was a family for, so kids could watch it that had one dad, two same-sex marriage, divorce, it was their family. They were a family too. And we made them think that, I think, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
as the years went on and divorce rates went up and, the traditional family was turned on upside down, that was a show that people could watch and go, oh, they're three guys in San Francisco. We didn't even raise an eyebrow to that. And so that was part of it. The critics got in my ear over the years. And, one guy said it's not going to last till Thanksgiving. I said, well, you didn't say which Thanksgiving, but they hated it. And so that was I felt like, well, I need to be on a more sophisticated show. What they missed was, in lieu of sophistication, there was sweetness, and it pushed the brain out of the way, and it made room for people to feel something. And I think right now you can look at the show and go, it's like a home cooked meal. It's like a home cooked meal of decency in a world that is not as decent as it used to be, or as we would like it to be.
Mhm.
So it was those kind of thoughts that came in my mind. And also, if you didn't get it, it's not for you. That's cool.
Yeah.
Go away. But certainly there's something there. All those stars lined up and magic happened. And you can't plan it. You can't write it. You can't cast it. It just has to happen. And it did for that one.
Well, you now have another generation who doesn't know about Full House yet. I was watching Fuller House
Mhm.
the other day, and my daughter, who's 3, goes,
Oh, really?
"Look, mommy, that's the man from your book." And she went and
What?
grabbed this book and brought it to me. So now, to her, you are the man from the book,
I like her. What's her name?
Lulu.
Lulu. Oh, that's cute too. Is she there now?
Oh, she's in the other room. Yeah.
Go get her. Lulu. Can we say hi to her?
Oh no, I'm not going to get up and go get her.
Oh,
We only
man.
have a few minutes left, so I want to
Good,
ask.
guys. It's all about Lulu now.
One
How did you become Brandon? How's that work?
Oh,
Your
so
mom.
people ask me that all the time, of course, because it's not typically a female name.
Mm.
But if I would have been a boy, I would have been Jeffrey. My mom picked out my name for a girl
Okay.
when she was in high school. She just liked it.
Brandon?
Brandon, yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
That's really cool.
Brandon Nicole.
That's beautiful. Is your
Very.
mom there? Is your mom there?
No, my I live in New Orleans. My family lives in Indiana.
Oh, really? You're in New Orleans right now?
Yes.
Wow, that's cool. I think we're playing. I'm with the Beach Boys at Jazz Fest this year.
Oh, nice. Okay,
Will you come?
well, I'll be there.
Will you bring Lulu?
Yes.
You can
She's
leave
in
your
New
mom at
Orleans.
home because she's got weird names for kids. But I'm kidding.
So anyway, back to Full House.
Well,
um, you don't immediately connect to your male co-stars. So it
I
seems
did
like,
with Dave. I did with
well,
Dave, but not much.
yeah, you and Dave connect more immediately. But at
Yeah.
first, you were like, "This guy's not funny,"
Oh,
and then
right.
you
Yeah.
went to one of his shows. But
Mhm.
then with Bob, it took a while, and so there was a sad evolution to those relationships, kind of this shared grief that eventually brought you all closer, right?
Yeah. Well, Bob's sister got scleroderma, and then Bob spent the rest of his life raising money for a cure. Sadly, she didn't get to see his hard work for her, and she passed away. And Dave, this was all around the same time. Dave's sister got cancer, and then my sister got a brain tumor. And so we weren't just three guys on a show. We were three brothers, grieving and praying that our sisters stay alive.
Yeah.
And then Dave's sister passed away. And my sister, thank God, they misdiagnosed it, and it was MS, and she's alive today, and she's a great inspiration to me. But to grieve together as we did and be there for each other. And then then it made us put the petty bullshit aside and just,
Sure.
be for, and then what the beautiful thing happened, that Bob and I just sort of used our differences to our benefits and to learn from each other. He was a brilliant comic, and he was a great man. He was really a good human. And if we learn anything, he never left anything on the table. I could show you one of his memorials. I said, well, let's see the last text that Bob's, and every one of it was, "I love you. I care about you. I'm proud of you." So that's a good lesson, that if we're, with someone that we love, we need to tell them. And my last dinner with Bob was my last dinner. And you never think this is gonna be the last dinner I have with my
Yeah.
best friend. You never think it's gonna be the last picture we take, and we took a picture. And he was everything I wanted him to be. Not that he needed to be whatever I wanted him, but he was just calm and very listened and was, and I'd grown a lot too, I think by then. And him taking 1,000 pictures at different angles, I don't know, my neck fat, be careful, didn't bother me. And it was just a nice, and usually we're always in a rush to go somewhere. We got to do this. We got to do that. Especially Bob, me too. I got to. And that night we didn't, and we just stayed. And we said, should we stay and order dessert or maybe have some tea or something? And and we did. And that's my what I talk about at the end there was just slow down a little bit and order the cake and cherish the people you're with when you get the chance to be with them.
Would that be what you want people to take away from your book?
Yes, one of the many things I hope they take away. Well, what did you take away from it? You tell me, Brandon.
Um, I took away the power of honesty,
Yeah.
and being authentic,
Yeah.
and gratitude.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, good. That makes me happy because it was a lesson in like to really write it all out.
Mhm.
I used to write a list every morning when I got up, my grateful, and it could be anything. And then it just kind of starts to happen. You just start thinking of it. And then now, my friend Jamie Lee Curtis and we text every morning and we say a G, what we're grateful for, fear, what we're fearful of, and A, what's our attribute? I'm a listener, I'm a healer, I'm a lover, I'm a whatever. And it's always good to write it down or at least really stop and think about because we're all pretty darn lucky and have pretty good lives. I think, and we've got to be grateful for that, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you got a daughter named Lulu, and you live in New Orleans. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I like it. Lisa's asking, after or aside from the book tour, what other projects do you have upcoming?
Well, we're on strike, so we can't
Right.
really do much. I had a few shows in development, and look at that weird picture. And now it's getting dark in here, and it's very. You just see my face like the Beatles on the
It did
cover.
like all of a sudden get very dark
You
too.
did right. Should I turn on some lights?
No,
Yeah,
I
we've seen enough of me.
mean,
Um, I don't. What am I doing? Well, tonight I'm just gonna go down there and have dinner with my son and my wife. I have a few friends here, and luckily, I'm doing some stuff at Disney the first week of December. I just kind of but not that don't spend a lot of time with them. And look, the pandemic. The only thing good about it was that I got to be home a lot and be with my family, and
yeah.
in the strike now, and so I'm gonna soak up every moment I can with my son and my wife, especially he's 5.5 and he's a character, and that's what I'm doing next.
Okay, that sounds wonderful.
Big
I want to close with, um,
a song? No.
well, you don't want me to sing.
Okay.
Maybe at Jazz Fest after a couple daiquiris. It'll
Okay.
be fine. Yeah. So you talk a lot about your philanthropic endeavors in the book, and you're an ambassador for Child Help. Um, so how have your various efforts changed over the years? I know that that's something kind of you got from your mother. She was always like, help people, help people.
Yeah.
But are there any charities that you'd like to tell us more about before we wrap up?
Well, I have to turn the lights on for this one, or one light. Um, well, I years ago, so I've been an ambassador and a spokesperson for Child Help USA, which is for advocate for dealing with child abuse and hopefully stopping it, which is not happening because humans. But and I have a 1-800 number they have that I really get out there, 1-800 for a child. And if you know somebody, or if you feel like you're being abused, or you have dealt with this and kept it inside and want to just talk about some ways to heal. I was at an event about 5 or 6 years ago, and it was a charity event, and I was making a speech. And as I'm writing the speech, this overwhelming this feeling and thoughts came bursting out. I was like, sweating and started crying. What's the matter with me? And I remembered a moment in my childhood, very, 10, 12 years old, of a babysitter doing some, inappropriate things. And I thought, well, do I talk about this now, tonight, when I was writing, when I was doing the event? And I said, no, it's about the kids tonight. I'm going to pack it away until at another time. I finished the book and I'm in there reading it. And it came back again. I was like, oh man, well, I guess now's the time to sell, but I don't want it to look like I was pandering or like trying to sell books on this. It was really something that I've dealt with for so many years. And then I started to feel like a charlatan if I wasn't going to talk about it, because, just from research and being around this organization, I realized that when people hold this in, it's like a disease, and it for sure can affect, future relationships, or, like I said, it can manifest in so many ways if you stuff things down. I don't know the impact of it on my life. I like to think it was a lighter situation, whatever that is. But I know there's a lot of people out there that it wasn't that for them, and it was. So I put it in the book, and then that kind of came out. And I was like, oh wow, and I've had so many people, write to me on social media. I swear to God, I had about 9 friends exactly text me and go, oh my God, I've never told anybody this, but the same thing happened to me, or this happened, and that. And then I go, okay, good. Okay, I'm glad I put that in. So I'm going to keep fighting and advocating for to prevent child abuse. It's now that I have a kid too, it's like, oh my God, how the hell can anybody hurt a kid? And certainly some of the sexual stuff. So that's where I'm at with that. And I again, like, I didn't put it in there to get headlines or anything. I just felt like it's something that I had never talked about and never really dealt with. And so I'm glad I put it in now, because I think it's helped people.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's
Brandon, I love
truly been a pleasure to speak with you for the last hour. Thank you for sharing your life with us, not only in your book, but just throughout the years. So,
Well, you're welcome, and thank you for doing this. You're very smart. You're very academical. I can just tell. And I'm gonna look your books up. What's the title of your book? One of your books?
the only one that I have, and it's just a book chapter, not a whole book,
Mhm.
is Libraries as Institutions of
Oh,
Social Justice, Human Rights and Social Justice.
I love it. Will you send it to me? I'm serious. I will read that.
Yeah, yeah, I can send that to you.
Thank you very much.
No problem. So
Have a great time there. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I also want to extend a huge thank you to our viewers for tuning
Yes.
in today, because, of course, without your support, none of this would be possible. And we thank you for choosing to spend your time with us.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Below the live stream video, you can find a link to John's book in that resources tab. So go ahead and click that resources tab. We look forward to seeing you all again next month when we chat with New York Times bestselling author and finance guru Tiffany the Budgetnista Alashay, who I sent you the link to earlier, John.
I'm gonna tune in for that too. I'm so happy that you did this, and I'm so happy that so many people have come on here to listen. And my gratitude is just overwhelming. To be on the New York Times bestseller #4, they tell me. I don't know what to say. I just know that I know that there's some people that I care deeply about that are proud, and that I'm happy to make them proud of me, I guess.
Yeah. Well, thank you very, very much. And